This morning, I want to take a look at one of the great accomplished men in the Bible. We read it. His name is Naaman. And we might put it this way. He was at the top of his game. He was at the top of the top. He was on the Mount Rushmore, if you will, of accomplished individuals. He had gotten as high as you could possibly get in life. I mean, he was an extremely successful man. When you read in verse number 1, it says, "Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria." He was a highly ranked individual in the military. He was kind of the equivalent of a 4 or 5-star general in the army, which was no small feat. This was a big accomplishment because you don't just inherit this position. You know, sometimes when we look at the kings of Israel and the kings of other nations, most of the kings are simply kings because they were the firstborn to the current king, right? They didn't do anything. They didn't accomplish anything. They just happened to be born to the right person at the right time in the right place, right? There's no accomplishment. They didn't do anything to earn their position of king. Most of the kings didn't conquer their way to the throne. They inherited it, right? So-and-so was the king and he passed away and his son became king. Or there was a queen so-and-so, and then her son became the next king. And, that's just kind of how it goes. But they didn't necessarily do anything to earn it. But if you're going to be the captain of the host of the nation of Syria, you have to earn that one. You have to go out into battle. And you have to fight the battles. And you have to win the battles. And you have to prove that you can do it. And then through your accomplishments, you are elevated and you are promoted. And then you get ultimately to the top position. He was somebody who, he was very good at what he did. Very good. We might say he was the best at what he did. He was accomplished. So he was very successful in his life. And he had some great status as well. When you read in verse number 1, it says, Naaman, he was captain of the host of the king of Syria, and he was a great man with his master. Who is his master? The king, right? The man with the highest position in the land, the man who could say whatever he wanted and everybody would do it. He was a great man with the king and honorable because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. So he's got some great position, great status. His master, the king, really likes him, respects him, listens to him. I mean, he's really got just about everything that you would want. This is the kind of man where little boys would grow up, and as they would play pretend, the boys would say, "I'm Naaman, and I'm the captain of the host." And another boy would say, "No, I want to be Naaman." This is that kind of guy. They want to pretend to be, Naaman. Look at Naaman. I'm Naaman, and conquering the nations and doing this. And they would tell these stories and listen to the stories. They looked up to him. They wanted to be like him. I mean, this is who Naaman was. He had the status. He had the success. He was also quite strong. It says there in verse number 1, he was also a mighty man in valor. Like we mentioned, he was in the military, and being in the military, he was strong. And in those days, being in the military mostly meant hand-to-hand combat. You went out with a sword and a shield or a spear, and you went out into the field, and you were doing hand-to-hand combat with the people of the other nation, the soldiers. And so you could imagine the physique, the bulging muscles and the stature that he had. Maybe he was a little taller than everybody else, maybe a little stronger than everybody else. And he had that physique where everybody was like, "Whoa, look at that guy." But he wasn't just physically strong, he was mentally strong. The Bible says that he was a mighty man in valor. He had courage. He wasn't just physically strong. When he went out into the battlefield and people got scared because of what they saw, or they got scared because of the enemies on the other side, he was the man who would charge into the battle. He was the man who would get out there and he would go and he would fight. He was not afraid of the fight. He was not afraid of the danger. He was not afraid of losing his life for his nation. Really, when you look at a man like this, you think, boy, he really seems like he has it all. He was successful, the most successful, we might say. He had the respect of his king, of his boss, of his peers, of people below him, of everybody in the nation. He was physically strong, mentally strong. I mean, seems like he's got all of the traits that any one of us might desire to have. We all desire to be successful, all desire maybe to have some sort of strength, whether it's physical strength or mental strength. Like to have the respect of our peers, the respect of people around us, even the respect of people above us. He had it all. In verse number 1, here's the description of him again. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor. What's the next word? That's not a word you want to see in the description, right? You want to see an and there. And he had done this. And he also had this. And he was successful. And he had status. And he was strong. But even though he was successful, even though he had the respect, even though he had all the internal characteristic traits, even though we might think, what more could you ask for? The description ends with, but he was a leper. Despite all of the success, there was one trait that overshadowed everything else. See, leprosy was a disease. And it's not a disease that you and I might be familiar with. I was reading about it. There's actually people today who have this disease that we call leprosy. But it seems like these two diseases, the Bible description of leprosy and this kind of modern leprosy, may not exactly be the same disease. But when you read the Bible description of the disease, it was a disease of the skin. And it would cause your skin to turn white. And as it would spread, it would also turn all of the hairs on that section white as well. Sometimes there would be sores. People sometimes lost their fingers and toes. I was reading one person who wrote about this disease, and he wrote it this way. Leprosy begins with specks on the eyelids and on the palms, gradually spreading over the body, bleaching the hair white wherever they appear, crusting the affected parts with white scales and causing terrible sores and swelling. From the skin, the disease eats inward to the bones, rotting the whole body piecemeal. I mean, it was a horrible disease. It was a massive problem. There was great suffering. And it's not a disease that you could be around other people. You had to be separated from them. It was a disease that caused separation and ultimately a horrible death. It was a dreaded disease. Nobody wanted leprosy. Nobody wanted anything to do with leprosy. And it overshadowed in the description, this resume, if you will, of Naaman. It overshadowed everything that he had. This disease of leprosy overshadowed his success. What does it matter if I have success? I have this leprosy. What does it matter if everybody loves me and respects me? I have leprosy. I have this disease. What does it matter if I have all the courage in the world? How is that going to help me against this disease? Being in the military, I'm sure he had his, kind of his military dress. And maybe when they would do parades, or maybe when they would come back from the battlefield, they would march into the city, and the cities would cheer, and he would have his uniform on. And people would look, wow, look at him. Look, there's Naaman. Look at him bringing back more victories for us and for our nation and for our people. And he could cover it with his uniform, but still on the inside, there was this disease that he knew was always there. as great as he was in this life, nobody would trade lives with him. The least successful would say, oh, to have that kind of success is great. But there's a catch. It comes with leprosy. Oh, never mind. No, that's okay. My life is okay. Oh, but you could have the respect of the king and your peers and everybody would adore you. Oh, that sounds really good, but it comes with leprosy. Okay, you know what? Maybe respect is not important anymore. I mean, this was a horrible, terrible disease, and though Naaman had everything in life that anybody could want, ultimately, he was not satisfied with life because he was helpless against this disease. You know, we live in a time of great success and a country of great success. And we are surrounded by success. People who have gotten great academic success, financial success, and been able to do some great things with it. Maybe with some of those successes, been able to get the job of your dreams, been able to work at a great company, be able to see your income to increase, been able to buy some different things, have some great success. Success means different things to different people. But we live in the land of success. There's so much success. A lot of people here in this country they're greatly respected and admired. Wow, look at him. Look at the college he got into. Wow, look at her. Look at the kind of job that she was able to get. Look at where she's been able to progress. Look at her life and been able to get some respect and maybe been able to get some things and maybe even, these internal character traits. You have some courage, physical strength. You go to the gym all the time and work out. And we live in a Naaman world, if you will, of success, respect, accomplishment. The things that we have are things that past generations never had. We have air conditioning this morning. We have central heating. We have cars. You can fly across the country 6 hours. You could fly around the world if you wanted to and get there by tomorrow. I mean, we have so much and can do so much and have received so much and accomplished so much, and yet we live in a time when people are not happy and they're struggling with things. They're struggling with their marriages and struggling with their kids and their families, and they're struggling with their internal emotions and struggling with all sorts of different things, and they can't get out of the mind the thing that somebody said to them a year ago. They can't stop forgetting about it, and they struggle with anger, and they struggle with their temper, and they struggle with bitterness, and they struggle with forgiveness. They struggle with all of these things. This is the kind of world that we live in. It reminds me of Haman in the book of Esther. If you've read your Bible and you've gotten to the book of Esther, you'll know that there was a very successful man. His name was Haman. Haman had climbed the ladder, and he was respected by the king, and he was able to influence the king to put in this law to kill all of the Jewish people of the nation. And he didn't know that the queen, Esther, was the king's wife, and she was Jewish as well. And so she's in this position, and her uncle Mordecai says, you're in this position, you've got to do something. And she's trying to figure this whole thing out. In the meantime, Haman has reached some great success, but Mordecai, every time he would walk by Mordecai, everybody was supposed to bow down to him. I mean, this was like the king's rule. You're supposed to bow down to Haman, but Mordecai would not do it. And he could not get that out of his mind. Even though he had accomplished so much, the only thing he could think about is that Mordecai is ruining my life. Ruining your life? He's just standing there. But he could not get over that. He was struggling with that. It sounds like a lot of people in the world today. It sounds a lot like Naaman. Naaman had a physical disease. But what people in this world suffer with, it's not necessarily a physical disease, but a spiritual one. See, leprosy in the Bible is a picture of sin. It's a picture of the disease of sin. It's a picture of the pain and suffering of sin. It's a picture of ultimately the consequences of sin. Leprosy would be this external, visible disease that we could see that pictures the internal disease that we all have. And we all have it. Sin is a disease that everybody has. Romans chapter 3, verse number 9 says, "What then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise. For we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one." It's a disease that we have. And it's a disease that becomes visible on the outside. I remember when I got COVID for the first time a few years ago. And, we all remember that time, remember the masks, remember the 6 feet apart. We're supposed to stand in line 6 feet apart. Sometimes you go to a store and you still see those stickers, on the floor, stand 6 feet apart, and plexiglass everywhere. You remember that? You go to the grocery store, there's plexiglass. You go to the restaurant, there's plexiglass everywhere. You'll go to a restaurant and there'd be plexiglass in between you and the table next to you. Do you remember that? We would do all of this. And I remember when I got COVID for the first time, I was feeling pretty sick. I was there for the services on Sunday, and I was kind of not feeling too great. And then Monday, I really started not feeling that good. And I was coughing and coughing and coughing. And then Tuesday, I was really feeling really, really bad and coughing. And so I was like, oh, man, I'm really sick. And my wife is really sick, but our kids are fine. My kid went to school on Monday and Tuesday, and she was feeling tired or whatever, and so we got to know, she's just really tired. Maybe she didn't get enough sleep. So we're like, oh, okay, all right. We got to test back the next day that our child had COVID, and so we were like, oh, do we have COVID? Maybe we have COVID. You remember the telltale sign was if you could smell something? So I took a scented candle and I stuck it in my wife's nose. I said, "Can you smell this?" She went, and she said, "No, I can't smell anything." I was like, you have COVID. And then I took a smell. I was like, I can't smell anything. We both had COVID. She had COVID. I had COVID. Our kids probably all had COVID. We all had COVID. And so we took the test. I've taken the test. If you've taken the test, you'll know you don't like taking the test. You open the thing and you have the little Q-tip thing or whatever. You jam it into your brain and, you pull it out and, you dip it in the liquid and you pour it out, and then you're waiting for the, the bars to show up. There's 2 bars supposed to be there. And, we remember that. And if you get the 2 bars, it means you have COVID. If you have 1, then that means, it's not COVID and things like that. They have different tests for other things as well. They're basically exactly the same thing. And, when I had COVID, the COVID is a virus, right? It's a disease that evidences itself on the outside through the coughing. I had chest pain. Some of you may have had chest pain. Some of you maybe did not. I lost my sense of smell. Some of you may not have lost your sense of smell. Some still lost their sense of smell. A couple years ago, we had Pastor Wrench. If you remember him, he came for the family conference. He had the mustache and the kind of the handlebars or whatever. And we were talking with him, and he said, oh, he got COVID really, really, really early on. Like kind of before they had announced or knew that it was here in the States. Like he got it. He was like one of the first ones. And he said he lost his sense of smell and still had lost his sense of smell. He said he could not smell like 90, 95% of things. And so he's living off of the imagination of the food that he remembers, And so we remember all of that. And those were signs that we had the disease. Those were the external visible things that we could see and know he has COVID or she has COVID or I have COVID because of these symptoms. And then we might take a test. The Bible has given to us a test as well and given us some examples of some signs and symptoms of the disease. We just read from Romans chapter 3. We'll continue in that passage. Their throat is an open sepulcher. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. You know what God says? You know that you have the sin of the disease of sin because you have the symptoms that are evidenced by the words that you use. When you say things unkind, when you say things out of anger, when you say things that are unforgiving and full of bitterness and hurtful to the other person, and all of those things, we see that. Verse 15, their feet are swift to shed blood. The places where you go, the things that you do. 16, destruction and misery are in their way, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. We all have this disease. It's a disease that's a horrible disease, and evidence in the way that we say things, the things that we think, the bitterness, the anger, the envy, the words that we use, ingratitude, disobedience to parents, false accusations, lies. Why does God give us all of these different symptoms, these different signs? Verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. You know why God has given to us the Bible? He's given to us the Bible in part as a test kit so that we might know whether we have the disease or not. People like to know, do I have COVID or not? Do I have the flu or not? Do I have this disease or not? And people take blood tests, or they take, the tests and dip it in the thing, and all of these different sorts of things. Sin is a disease, just like leprosy, that is horrible, painful, and ultimately brings death. And here in this passage, we see Naaman. He was successful, he was accomplished, he was respected, he was strong in every way, what everyone might want to be, and yet he had something that overshadowed all of that. And it was called leprosy. For us in this world, we live in a world where people are successful. They live in nice houses, and they drive nice cars, and they get to go on nice vacations, and they get to eat nice food, and they get to wear nice clothes and go to nice places and be in nice things, and they have everything that they might desire, and yet they're not happy. They're struggling with maybe a relationship in their marriage. They're struggling with their kids, and they're struggling with all sorts of different things. And even though they should be the happiest person alive and a huge smile on their face all the time, and yet there's always anxiety and concern and fears. And this issue of sin mirrors very closely this disease of leprosy. And here's what Jesus said about sin. He said in Matthew chapter 16, verse number 26, "For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world?" Imagine somebody who got it all. What does it profit? What's the point if you get the whole world and lose your own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Naaman lived in a time when leprosy was incurable. There was nothing you could do, you just had to live with it. And people today have that same mentality towards, well, sin is just a thing, and you just got to live with it. But I'm here to tell you that you don't have to just live with it. I want to see from Naaman's life, Naaman's hope. There is hope for everyone that struggles in life. There is hope for everyone that is suffering from the pain of sin. There is hope for everyone that even though you might think that you have all of the things in this life and that yet you're still not happy. You're not happy in your marriage. You're struggling in that relationship. You're struggling with your parents. You're struggling with your kids. You're struggling with people around you. You're struggling with, anxieties and fears and things within yourself. There is hope for you. In verse number 2, the Bible says, and the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife, and she said unto her mistress, would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. This was the first time that he had heard, somebody can do something about my leprosy. He had never heard that before. He never thought that before. He thought it's impossible. This is just something I have to live with until the day that I die. But on that day, he found out there was hope. And if you're sitting here today, I want to tell you there is hope. You don't have to live with sin. You don't have to live with sin inside of you and the disease that you have. You can be healed. There is hope for you. You don't have to pretend like you don't have sin. You don't have to live a life just covering up all of the things. You can be healed. There is hope for you. You know, we live in a world that needs hope. You know, this last week was the Democratic National Convention. I think they had it in Chicago. And, you know, one of the big buzzwords that came out of the convention, I didn't watch it, but, you know, just reading a little bit about it, was hope. Hope is making a comeback. You know, that's one of the phrases that came out. Our country needs hope. That's the idea. Did you know our country as a whole, the population, the people, are wealthier than any people in history? The net worth of people own in this country is in the, I think, tens and hundreds of trillions of dollars. It's a lot of money. And we have a lot of things. And we've had more than past generations. You know, the houses that we live in are much bigger than the houses that people lived in the past. When you read about some of the people that, you know, we look up to in the past, you look at Abraham Lincoln, and wow, look at Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was born in a house with one room. All right, we're not talking about a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. We're not talking about even a studio. We're talking about everything is in the same thing, you know? And that's the kind of life that he lived. And we have much better, much more comfortable lives. And yet it seems like we are lacking in hope. It's evidenced, and it's very clear, money is not the answer. It's very clear, success is not the answer. Oh, people have a lot of success and they still struggle with these things. You look at the list of all the people that are at the top of the list of wealthiest people in America, they're pretty much all struggling with their marriages. They all struggle with their family. They all struggle with their kids. Clearly, wealth is not the answer. Fame is not the answer. Power is not the answer. Self-help is not the answer. Here is Naaman, and he knew his success wouldn't help him in this disease. And he knew the respect of other people wouldn't help him. His internal strength and physical strength that he had, that wasn't going to help him. There's no hope in any of those things. But there was some real hope that was given to him that day. And that hope came from the Lord. See, hope for your sin is not going to come for your husband or wife. It's not going to come from your mom and dad. It's not going to come from your brothers or sisters or even other people that are here. I can't heal you of your sin. Neither can anybody else that is here. But there is hope for your sin because of the Lord. But I want to see Naaman's hurdle here. He's got hope. But there's something yet in between him and being cured. Let's take a look. Verse number 4. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, thus and thus saith the maid that is of the land of Israel. Somebody went to the king and said, hey, king, I was with, Naaman's wife, and, there was a maid from Israel, and these are the things that she said. I don't know if this is true. What do you think? Verse number 5, and the king of Syria said, go. Right? Give it a shot. And I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver. Okay? Now, you and I might think, okay, I know what silver is, but what are 10 talents? Okay? I was reading that apparently a talent was the amount that a man could carry. So roughly speaking, if we're generalizing and guessing and estimating, a talent was about 75 pounds, right? Because a grown man, you could carry 75 pounds. Some could carry more, but, just as an estimate, we would say 75 pounds. So 10 talents of silver was roughly 750 pounds of silver. I mean, he's coming with the money. And 6,000 pieces of gold. And 10 changes of raiment. Now, you and I might think 10 outfits, that's not that impressive. But back then, getting a new piece of clothing was not cheap. It was expensive. So that tells us something about where we are at 10. Whoa! You didn't have to do that. That's way too much. But he's coming with 750 pounds of silver, 6,000 gold coins, and 10 changes of raiment. Verse number 6. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. All right? When you read the letter, the man that's there, that's Naaman. And I sent him over there so that you would cure him of the incurable disease. That's basically what he's saying. All right, verse number 7, and it came to pass when the king of Israel had read the letter that he rent his clothes. He ripped his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and make alive? He's like, everybody knows you cannot cure anybody of this disease. You want me to bring this essentially dead man back to life? That this man does send him to me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. He's like, he asked me to do the impossible. He's just trying to pick a fight with me. That's what he's saying. What am I supposed to do? I mean, he comes to me and he says, hey, he's acting like he's all nice, and then he gives this ridiculous request. I mean, can't everybody see what's really going on here? I mean, he's just trying to pick a fight with me. He doesn't know what to do. If I say yes, well, I can't do it. If I say no, they're going to get angry for saying no. What do you do? Verse number 8. And it was so when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Why are you so upset about this? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. Don't worry about it. Just send him my way. Verse number 9. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Okay. I don't know exactly what it looked like, but I imagine this whole entourage comes up to Elisha's door. And Elisha was a humble man. He didn't live in a big mansion or whatever, probably just a small little home. And he had his one servant there. And so Naaman comes in. He's probably got his, military dress uniform. You could imagine him. And he comes up to the door and goes, or I don't know, some people do the, they do the little rhythm, and so he stands back and waits, and he's, and a man opens the door. Now, you and I live in social media world, internet world, where we know what people look like. But back in those days, they didn't know what people look like. And so a man opens the door, and he looks at David, and David looks at him, and he's like, prophet? Are you Elisha? Who are you? And he is the messenger from Elisha. I'm not the prophet. I'm just here to tell you what the prophet wants me to tell you. Verse number 10. Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. Elisha doesn't even meet him or show his face. He just simply, just go tell Naaman, just go wash in the river Jordan 7 times, and you'll be clean. That's it. Not exactly the answer that Naaman was expecting. Because in verse number 11 it says, But Naaman was wroth. He was angry. He was angry. Why? And he went away and said, Behold, I thought he will surely come out. There'd be a glorious light coming from the background as he swings open the door and says, Are you Naaman the leper? Yes, I am. I am come to heal you. And bang, hits him on the forehead or whatever. And, a light shines out and he looks down and he's clean. He thought it'd be some glorious spectacle like that. Stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. That's what I thought. That's not what he said, though. He said, Are not Abana and Pharpar rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Now, he is the king of Syria, and he's talking about the rivers of Damascus. I looked where these rivers were. These rivers were on the border between Damascus and Israel, or Samaria, rather. And so basically, these are like the rivers that are like conquered rivers. They're like at the very edge. This is like just beyond them. And he's basically saying, even the edge, the things that are way out there are better than the best rivers that you have. The worst that we have is better than the best that you have. That's what he's saying. He's saying, the rivers in our country, the worst rivers in our country, are better than the best river that you've got, which is the Jordan River. And the Jordan River is not impressive. It's famous for being muddy. People would call it the muddy Jordan River. He's saying, couldn't I just go over there? That's way better than even this disgusting water. May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. So what do you think everybody's standing there looking at Naaman and looking back and forth like, do we tell him? What do we do? And so you could see the servants huddling up over here like, how do we approach him? Okay, this is what I would do, and this is okay, all right. And so all the servants come over to Naaman and they, Naaman, well, we heard what you said, and but we had an idea if you'd be willing to listen. That's how I imagine them talking to him. And his servants came near and spake unto him and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, if he had asked you to like conquer a nation or climb Mount Everest, wouldst thou not have done it? If he had asked you to do that, wouldn't you have done it? It's a rhetorical question. Of course he would have done it. He would do anything to be cured of this disease. How much rather then, when he saith to thee, wash and be clean. Naaman was so close to missing the miracle because of one thing: his pride. Doing it God's way would mean humbling himself and not doing it his own way. People want to be saved from sin, but they want to do it their way and not God's way. It would require him to humble himself and do things that are not glorious, things that don't make me look like the hero. It would require him to humble himself in the presence of everyone else. Everyone else would see, here is this great man dipping down into this disgusting river and just going down time and time again. And he almost missed it. Being cured of this impossible to cure disease. I mentioned that every one of us has a disease, the disease of sin. And there are some that are so close to being cured, but there's something in the way. It's their pride. They don't want to submit to God's way. They don't want to hear God's word. They don't want to acknowledge God's judgment. They don't want to admit that they are sinners. They don't want to admit that they've broken God's law. They don't want to admit that they are sinners, that they're not good people, that we have a sin nature within us. And the reason why we do wicked things is not because of other people, but because I have the disease of sin. The reason why I said those things is because I'm a sinner. The reason why I acted that way is because I'm a sinner. We don't want to do things God's way. We don't want to admit that without God we are without hope. They don't want to humble themselves before others. I grew up going to church pretty much my whole life. And I said a prayer. I told people I was saved when I was in second grade. And I told people I was saved. And I got baptized. They had the service in the church and I got baptized. I went through the elementary school years, went through the teen years, and got into college and all of these things. And everybody thought I was saved. I was a piano player, played in the choir, sang in the choir. I would teach classes. I was helping in the youth group ministry and doing different things. And I was doing all of these things. People thought I was saved, but deep down inside, I always wondered, maybe I'm not saved. People talk about this relationship with God, and I really don't feel like I know God at all. I read the Bible. and I pray and I go to church and I serve and I do all these things, but I don't really feel like I know who God is. I don't feel like I know God. And I read the Bible, and people talk about, wow, God talked to me today, and I'm just reading the Bible, and I'm like, it's good stuff, it's helpful information. I don't really feel like somebody's talking to me. And when I pray, I don't feel like anybody's listening or anybody hears or anybody cares. And sometimes things would happen and the prayers would be answered, but I never, is that God? Is it not God? I never really knew. And so I always had these doubts. And one of the things that stopped me from these, getting saved earlier was, what would other people think if they knew that I wasn't saved and I told them I was saved? Sometimes that's all it takes to keep somebody from being saved. Well, what would brother so-and-so think? What would my pastor think? Let me tell you, everyone would be thrilled that you got saved. Everyone. These servants, they would have been thrilled for Naaman to be healed. For them to see Naaman to be so close and then to walk away back home without being healed, everyone would be so disappointed. They would have been thrilled. Instead of pretending like you don't have the disease, Naaman, you could just be healed. Isn't that better than putting on the clothes and covering it up? Isn't it better than pretending like it's not there? Isn't it better than just toughing it out and pretending like you could do it without any healing? Isn't it better to be healed? Sometimes people care more about what somebody else thinks than actually being healed. You could be healed. Sometimes people they don't want to be saved because they want to be able to say, look what I did. I had some part in it. But Ephesians chapter 2, verse number 8 says, for by grace are you saved through faith, and then not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works. Not one of us who is saved had any part with our salvation. It's not like you and God work together to get saved. No. It's not of works. Why? Lest any man should boast. God doesn't want anybody to say, wow, God, I'm here. Aren't you so glad that I'm here? Because look what I did. Look how good I am. Look at all of the money I gave. Look at all the church attendance. I have a perfect attendance record at church services. Sunday morning, a live connection class, and Sunday night and Wednesday night, and I participate in all the activities, and look at me. And God says, no. Salvation is not a we thing. I save you. And that's how it works. Sometimes people don't get saved because they don't want to admit there's only one way to be saved. There's only one way Naaman was going to be healed. He could have dipped in any of the millions of other rivers in the world and he would not have been healed. He could have conquered any number of nations and not have been healed. He could have gone through all of these things. But there is only one way to be cured of your sin. John chapter 14 says, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. You can try other religions if you want, dipping into other rivers if you want, but you're not going to be healed by dipping into the other rivers. You could try as hard as you want. You could have church attendance. You could do all of the things. You could participate and give and all of that, but there is only one way to heaven, and it's not by your giving. It's not by your attendance. It's not by your service. It's not by your religiosity. It's not by your doing good things. None of those things will cure you of your sin. Only Jesus can cure you of your sin. And that was the hurdle. Naaman had a little bit of pride. He was so close, and he almost missed it. But his servants wisely came up to him and they said, Master, Father, you're so close. It's so simple. If you would just do it, you could be healed. Let me tell you, all the saved people that are here in this room, if we knew who was saved, we don't always know who's saved. I grew up going to church and people thought I was saved when I wasn't saved. But if we could somehow, supernaturally know, we would all plead with you just like the servants. You're so close. Don't let that stop you. Don't let what your mom thinks. Don't let what your dad thinks. Don't let what your brother thinks. Don't let what your friends think. Don't let what other people think stop you from being saved. That's what the servant said. Thirdly and lastly, we see Naaman's healing. Verse number 14. Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Naaman was clean. He was healed. I want to talk to you about this healing. His healing was instantaneous. He dipped the first time, nothing. He dipped the second time, nothing. He dipped the third time, nothing. Just the same as before. 4, 5, 6 times he dipped, nothing. The 7th time he goes down, and the 7th time he comes up, and he is healed instantly. When we talk about diseases, there's often a long process through the healing, through the curing. My sister-in-law had cancer and had it twice, and there's surgeries, there's chemo, there's radiation, there's all these treatments, there's medication that she has to take now, and every 6 months she has to go back, and all of these sorts of things. And there's this big, long, drawn-out process for something like that. But when it comes to salvation, God saves you in an instant. You're healed. You're saved of all of your sins. You're cleansed of every one. It's instantaneous, and it's also complete. When Naaman came up the 7th time, you know how much leprosy he had? Not a little bit, not less than before, none. When you get saved, God cleanses you of all of your sin. You are 100% saved in the eyes of God. And this cleansing was transformational. The Bible says that his skin was like the skin of a little child. I have little children. And I look at my skin. And I look at their skin. I think, man, it's so soft. It's so smooth. When we get older, we get scars and things like that. I remember one time I was in our baby's room. We have this table, and we have a rocking chair. And so I was holding our newborn, and I was in the rocking chair, and I was kind of, the table's here, if you could imagine, and I'm like on the rocking chair, and my knees are kind of pulled up, and my feet are on the edge of the table. So I'm kind of leaned back, and my feet are up here, and I'm kind of, him this way. And so I forget, either he fell asleep and I was going to put him down, or something like that. And so I was going to get down. And so I took my feet off the table, and the rocking chair kind of, rocked forward. And I wasn't really paying attention. And so the edge of the table scraped all the way up my left leg. And it left me with, it gashed me, just kind of this big section on my leg. And I was like, but I don't want to wake up the baby. So I'm like, so I'm like, taking him over there, and I think I put him down, and, I'm like, and I'm trying to slowly, quietly close the door, and, I'm looking down, and there's blood coming out, and so, I'm trying to clean up and stuff like that. And, this was like when he was a newborn. I think he was, just a few months old. So it was, I don't know, a long time. I look down at my leg. I still have marks there. I still have like little red spots. The skin is fully healed, but you can kind of see where it was still at. And we all have that. Because as you go through life, you get calluses on your hands, you get cut or scraped and stuff like that, and your skin over the years gets all of these things. It's healed, but there's still scars and scabs and things like that. As we mentioned, leprosy was a disease of the skin. It would have left scars and damage and all sorts of different things. But when God healed him, he made him new. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, therefore, if any man be in Christ, if anybody gets saved, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. You're a new man when you get saved. You're a new woman when you get saved. God has made you new. You are born again, Colossians chapter 3, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. When you get saved, you are completely healed, and you get a new life. You are a new man with a new mind and a new purpose. You have a new family with a new father and new brothers and sisters, and you have a new destiny. You have a new home. That's what God desires. Here we see Naaman living a modern American life, if you will. Great success, great wealth, great respect, great accomplishments, great internal fortitude and physical strength, but he was a leper. There are many people in America that are just like Naaman. They would describe it in different ways. He was the president. He started his own company. He was successful, made a lot of money, made a great deal, bought a great stock, flipped a great home, and had some great things. People respect him. People like him. People are with him. People look up to him. People want what he has. But he was a sinner. And ultimately, that sin will bring death. But you can be healed. There's only one way. His name is Jesus.